No, can you see my screen, class?
Yes, sir. Welcome, sir.
All right. So what are you seeing on the screen?
Material Resources Management by Dr.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. How many are you supposed to be in this class? We're just 86. All right. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. They have
Good
given
evening,
you lectures on management and entrepreneurship. We want to look at a few aspects of management. Now, for those of you who are MPH students or health system management students, we're going to receive more detailed lectures on principles of management. But we cannot talk about material resource management or human resources management without knowing some basic facts about management. So, what is management? Management is the process of getting things done through people in an organized setting to achieve organizational goals and objectives. And there are 5 traditional management functions. Planning means determining what will be done in future. The second traditional management function is organizing. Organizing means putting structure in place for work to be done. If you want to prepare dinner for your family, you have to look for the material, the ingredients and other things you want to. That is the plan, the organizing before you do the cooking. So putting structure in place for work to be done. That please, something is echoing. It's echoing. Please.
This meeting is being recorded.
I've not, because it's not part, what I'm talking now is not part of this lecture. So I'm giving it as a preamble. So the next traditional management function is directing or leading. What does that mean? That in the workplace, workers will be given responsibility to work. And that you should ensure that they are supervised and that doing the work according to the way it should go. You direct them. And then the last of the management functions is controlling. Controlling at the end of the work, you want to be sure that the results are the way they should be. In other words, work has been done according to plan. Now, you cannot manage without resources. You cannot manage without resources. And what are the resources needed for management? You need material resources. In the healthcare setting, we need hospital beds, suction machines, theater lamps, examination couch, operating tables, monitors, sphygmomanometer, and so on and so forth, which are equipment. We also have consumables, drugs, laboratory reagents, X-ray chemicals, films, and so on and so forth. gauze, syringes, needles, cotton wool, and so on and so forth. These are consumables. We need these in care services. Class, are you listening to me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So apart from materials, we also need human resources, manpower. In the healthcare sector, nurses, doctors, physiotherapists, pharmacists, laboratory scientists and technologists, and so on and so forth. We also need money and time and other resources. So we cannot be talking about management and entrepreneurship or health service managers without knowing what material resources are and how to manage them, or what human resources are and how to manage them. That is why we are having these lectures. Are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right, so let's continue. So this is the outline. Introduction. We'll look at what material resources are. And like I told you, the 5 traditional management functions starts with planning. So if you want to manage material resources, you must plan. So material resource planning is important. Then the materials we have, how we manage them, that's inventory management methods. But whether they are deploying material resources to support the provision of efficient and effective healthcare services. In other words, wherever material resources are, we want to mobilize them and use them to support the healthcare services we are providing. Now, in the healthcare setting, there are 2 main types of materials: equipment, and then drugs and other medical consumables. Whether they are material equipment or drugs, the management of them is the same. That's why I say we are going to use the drug management process as a case study. Now, we cannot be talking about material resource management without planning, because planning means determining what is to be done in future. So if we want to plan for our material resources in the healthcare, then we have to understand what material resource planning is. It's indeed a method of planning and controlling inventory, production, and scheduling. So material resource planning evaluates different business activities through the lens of the customer demand. In other words, whatever we are doing in the healthcare sector is for our patients. If you are in production, whatever you are producing is for the consumer. If you are in service industry like healthcare, whatever you are doing is for your customer. So what the customer wants is what is of importance to you. So the goal is to manage the organizational material resources in a more effective and cost-efficient way. You don't want to waste resources, and you want the results to be achieved. So for you to do that, you need to break down the process, like healthcare, into component parts, detailed component parts, and see what is involved in each part. A patient comes to the hospital. He gets to the records first, from records to the nurses station to the doctor, from doctor to either pharmacy or to lab or to x-ray or to physio, as the case may be. So you break the work down and then look at what you want, materials you want for each of these components of work. So the practice breaks down the production operation schedule into more detailed process to better manage the purchasing of materials, supplies, and stock. So forecasting methods are used to predict upcoming customer demands, and inventory ordering is adjusted accordingly. In other words, you need to look upfront, because certain diseases are seasonal. Others are routine. If you are running an immunization clinic, when you start, you might not have a lot of patients, but over time they might come. The same thing with other clinics. So you forecast based on the level of patronage to know how much the patronage will be. And that will now determine how much material resources you need to deploy to provide the healthcare services. Class, are you following me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So material resource planning is considered as a push system of inventory control. It is suited for industries such as retail or food service, where having a steady supply of stock on hand to meet customer demand is crucial. Because if you are running a restaurant, and the materials to cook your food are not there, and customers are coming, food is not ready, you're waiting for suppliers to come, then something is not wrong. In the same way, in the healthcare setting, patients have come, you say you don't have folders, you don't have tracer cards, you don't have continuation sheets, or you don't have dispensing envelopes, or that there are no manometer or thermometer to take vital signs, or in the accident, there are no monitors, then that's a big problem. So this is also true for health institutions and facilities. Now let us look at the equipment we have. The equipment, the inventory we have is divided into two parts: independent and dependent. What do we mean by independent? Those are standalone items, like a suction machine, like an aesthetic machine, like a sphygmomanometer, operating table, and so on and so forth. So the independent items refer to finished items like sphig, suction machine, spectrophotometer that is used in lab, gas cylinders, theater lamps, medications, and so on and so forth. Then we have the dependent man, those ones that will be used to service the independent ones. Like now, sphygmomanometers will look for cuffs and bulbs. Suction machine will look for tubes. Spectrophotometer will look for cuvettes and reagents. Gas cylinders will require oxygen or nitrous oxide or whatever gas. Theater lamps will look for bulbs. Then for drugs, you're going to look for dispensing envelopes, dispensing bottles, galenics to even compound these drugs. Those are the dependent items. They are used to service the independent ones. So businesses determine the necessary quantities of each of these dependent items based on market demand for the independent items. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
So I have a question, please.
Yes, ask your question. Don't waste my time. Oh, ask your question.
Oh, sir, please, I did not actually understand the independent and dependent inventory. Can you please throw
You
more
were not
light on me?
listening. You were not listening. You were not listening. Are you not a medical person?
Sorry.
Are you not a medical person?
No,
Are you not did you study history? Are you not a health worker?
I am.
What did you so if you are, what is difficult about this thing that I just did? It's because you are not following. I've classified hospital equipment into dependent and independent groups. Like now, drugs are finished products. They are finished products, but they cannot hand them over to you without putting them in dispensing envelope or syrup bottles. Are you hearing me? Or you cannot get finished items, drugs, without galenics that you use to compound them. If you are having a sphygmomanometer It comprises a mercury column, a cuff, and a bulb with connecting tubes. So the finished machine is an independent item. But the bulb can go bad, the valve can go bad, the tubes can go bad, and they have to be replaced. For suction machine, it has tubes. The machine, that is an independent part. But for it to work well, the tubes have to be airtight. Are you listening to me? So
I'm listening.
those tubes which we use to service the suction machine are dependent parts. The gases we use in the hospital, the cylinders, if we don't put gas in them, there will be no need. So anesthetist or in the emergency room, they use oxygen. Oxygen has to be used to fill the cylinders and given to the patients. Is there any other person who does not understand? The finished products are the independent. Those ones that are used to make the finished ones work are the dependent ones. They depend on the other ones. The cuff alone, the valve alone cannot work. The tubes alone cannot work if the sphygmomanometer is not there. All right. I know I've not satisfied you, but I cannot stay there.
I understand it,
So
sir.
let us look at the steps in material resource planning process. So material resource planning is used for a variety of business activities, including service setting that where we work, health sector, even in production settings like factories. One of the primary goals is to reduce the inventory cost for companies, which covers both stored costs of keeping supplies on site, as well as purchasing costs by reducing overspending on supply. What do I mean? You need materials. You have to place order for them. And when they come, if you are not using them immediately, you have to store them somewhere. And if you don't have a store, then you must hire a store to keep them. And if you produce and you don't have a market, you have to store them somewhere again. So the planning process ensures that you know the demand for these your products or services, and then you procure the materials to provide services or products from whatever sources they are in such a way that when they come, you don't keep them for too long, because that space is needed for some other things. If you don't have, you're going to pay. And that the ones you produce, you don't keep them there for too long. You move them out so that others can take their place. So by so doing, you reduce the inventory cost. And that ultimately will improve productivity and customer service so that you can have a competitive edge in your business. The processes and calculations included in the material resource planning method are key to maintaining a balance within the warehouse or your store. So we need to note that there are many different departments that contribute to accurate materials. In the health sector, lab, they need their materials. Pharmacy need their materials. X-ray, radiology department need departments. So you need their demands to enable you calculate the materials required that you are going to procure. Unfortunately, in our setting, every department procures his or her materials. But I know that there's a procurement department in UPTH. But whether they procure for clinical departments, I don't know. All right. So what are the steps? The first thing is you need to determine the quantity of material you need. That's the first one. Determine the quantity of material you need. You need to select, like if it's drugs, tell us the type of drugs you need. If it's dispensing bottles, tell us. If it's needles and syringes, tell us. So businesses will have an accurate knowledge of how much stock is already on site, what you have, then how much has been recorded, and how much has already been committed to be used for customers. So the step involved in determining the quantity involves gathering data such as customer order details, which includes all information received from shoppers as well as the purchasing pattern. Now I'm using generic terms. Sorry, my network disappeared. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
All right. So it's a stage where inputs create outputs, which help business to make the best inventory decisions. So output resulting from material resource planning calculations include a recommended purchasing schedule that after we have calculated, how are we going to get them? Is it all at once or in bits over time? Designed to meet demand. And then a material plan that outlines the dependent inventory required, work order, and primary and secondary reports, which we are going to see shortly. So after determining the quantity, then making the necessary calculations, the next one is now to make the orders. You have to place order so that the suppliers or manufacturers can bring those materials to you. Based on the calculation, business should be in a position to determine what orders need to be made. So scheduling future orders should also become easier. So we are going to use orders from customers to determine your order for materials. Then your forecast for demand of your product or service will also be needed. Then you provide a master production schedule so that you can produce and meet the demand without stockpiling finished products over time. And then you develop a bill of material, list of materials and their quantities and possibly their cost. Then you do the inventory record, a listing of raw materials, which is part of the bill of material or end products that are located on site. That's what you already have in stock, because whatever you produce will be added to that. Once you have that information, an output is created, and there are 4 types of outputs. That's results. You place a purchasing order, you put a material plan. Purchasing order is a schedule that you propose that will include other forms to be sent to suppliers of raw materials to you. So within the purchasing order, there will be a schedule along with quantities when they are going to start to deliver. Then the finished dates designed to complete the material purchasing. So then you have the material plan, which is a detailed plan that lists materials, assembly items, and other things. The primary report includes all the previous outputs that cover production, planning, and control. The secondary report covers areas like performance, control, and deviations, as well as predictions for future inventory or contracts. Now, let us look at some other aspect of it that will interest us as healthcare professionals. Inventory management methods. There are several inventory management methods, but two of them are common and are very significant, particularly drug management in the health setting. One of them is the VED. VED is an abbreviation, V for vital, E for essential, and D for desirable. So it's an analytical method that classifies drugs in a health facility to those vital ones that are very essential for life saving. Then the next one are essential ones that without that, then the facility will not run well. And then desirable ones that are not life-threatening conditions, but their presence is also needed. So the categorization or classification of drugs into vital, essential, and desirable is based on the operational criticality. How impactful are they in patient care? It's not based on their cost. So based on that, the most important medications should always be available in the facility. Those ones that are for life-threatening conditions, followed by those ones that are essential. Then the desirable ones, if they are not there, something catastrophic will not happen. The next classification is the ABC. This method classifies materials into three categories, A, B, and C. And the focus is on the most critical at ensuring more efficient control and management. Here, cost is the primary consideration. So we're going to go into details for each of them. So let's start with the vital, essential, and desirable analysis. So it's an inventory management technique that classifies items into vital, essential, and desirable categories. In a hospital or pharmacy setting, the analysis helps managers to allocate resources, determine stock levels. So those vital ones, their stock levels should never go near zero. Should never go near zero. For the desirable ones, they can even be exhausted. For the essential ones, they should always be there, but not as important as the vital ones. The vital ones should never, under any circumstance, get out of stock in the hospital. Class, are you listening to me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
So the analysis helps managers allocate resources, determine stock level, and implement purchasing policies that prioritize the most important medication. That's the vital ones, followed by the essential, then the desirable. Like we said, the analysis is not based on how costly these items are. No. It is based on how important they are in saving the lives of patients. the impact they have on patient care. That is the consideration in classification. So let us look at the details of the classification, the vital items. They are the most critical items which are indispensable for patient survival and continuity of essential hospital services. In other words, without them, hospital services cannot work. So a stock out of a vital medication cannot be tolerated. And all measures you need to make sure that they are always available should be put in place. What are these items? Life-saving drugs like adrenaline, hydrocortisone for anaphylactic reactions, essential vaccines, insulin for diabetic coma and whatever, critical antibiotics, activated charcoal for poisoning, atropine, nitroglycerin for heart attack, anti-snake venom, phenytoin for convulsion or diazepam. So inventory management will ensure a high safety stock for these items and maintain continuous oversight to ensure that they are never in short supply. Any questions, class? The list is not exhaustible. You can add more because I cannot use drugs to fill this slide. And then I have nothing to I will give. So that is it. I just picked a few items. All right. The next group is essential drugs. They are necessary for effective treatment of priority diseases that are common in the facility, but are not critical as those vital items. If they are not available, you can manage without immediate life-threatening consequences. If these drugs, the essential drugs, are not available, the hospital can run without immediate life-threatening consequences. When they are not available, it might be inconveniencing. But short-term absence might be manageable without immediate life-threatening consequences, especially if you have an alternative or substitute that exists. So inventory levels are essential for essential items can be managed with a more moderate approach compared to the vital ones. So what are the examples? Common antibiotics, antihypertensives, antidiabetics, standard intravenous fluids, or routine surgical supplies. Class, are you listening to me?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Sir.
So how many are we in the class now?
Yeah.
125.
Yes, sir.
The last group is the desirable items. They are the least critical items in the inventory. They are beneficial for patient care, but not critical for immediate survival. Without them, patients will still exist. If they are not there, the core functioning of the hospital or health facility will not suffer unduly. So their absence will not affect routine operations. Even if the shortage persists for a long time, there will be no significant impact on patient care or hospital operations. So such items can be procured in minimal quantities or on an as-need basis to save cost. Pain relievers, specific vitamin supplements, dermatological creams like, what is it called? Calamine lotion, antacids, or low priority items. The list is long, but you can pick based on your experience as a clinician. Any questions, class? So, what are the critical points in this vital, essential, and desirable classification? The classification is based on the impact of the drug on patients' care. In other words, how life-threatening the condition that this drug will be used for is. So criticality-based classification. VD classified drugs as vital based on their importance to patient care, prioritizing operational needs. The second critical point is that it ensures uninterrupted supply, particularly for the vital ones. The analysis mandates strict control over vital items to prevent stockout of life-saving medications. And the third critical point is optimize inventory level. It enables managers to set appropriate stock level for each category. Stock level should not fall below this for vital, not below this for essential, not below this for desirable, preventing overstocking of less critical items and saving costs. So instead of you to have surplus of vitamin supplements, we should have surplus of the vital items. Complementary to the ABC. The ABC is the other one, the other classification method, where the items are classified into A, B, and C based on their turnover and cost. So VD is often combined with cost-based ABC analysis to create a criticality and financial value. I told you the ABC is on cost, while the VD is on life-threatening or life-saving. So another key point is enhanced patient safety. By focusing on the most critical items, the VED directly contributes to improving patient care and reduce the risk that are associated with drug shortages. And then it also guides in resource allocation. You know where to put the bulk of the money in and where to put the least of the money in. It helps healthcare facilities strategically allocate limited financial and human resources towards the most important pharmaceutical supplies. Then it also helps to inform decision making. So how do we conduct the VD analysis? How do we conduct the VD analysis? Because we need to classify drugs into vital, essential, and desirable. You must have a list of all the drugs you need in that facility. So the first thing is to identify all the needed items in the facility for patient care. So the process begins with a comprehensive list of all drugs, consumables, and medical supplies. Now, no single person can, based on the list of inventory items, categorize them into vital, essential, and desirable. So you need a team of professionals. So a panel of experienced medical professionals, physicians, surgeons, pharmacists, and so on and so forth should be set up so that they can provide expert judgment on criticality of each item. How significant is this drug in the life of patients? Without it, can the patients stay for some time? So these people will now form the team, and thereafter they now go and classify the items into the 3 categories. Are we there?
Yes, sir.
I hope I'm not talking to myself.
Yeah.
Start talking
Yeah.
to
We are
yourself.
with you, sir.
No, sir, we are hearing you.
All right,
We are
so
with you.
after categorizing them, after identifying that's listing all the items, setting up the team, which will now look at the items one by one and then categorize them into vital, essential, and desirable. The next one is what should be the stock level that we should not go below in the facility. That will be the 4th one, stock level and recorder points. Based on the classification, managers determine appropriate stock level for each category. higher safety stock is maintained for vital, while desirable items may have minimal stock. Then you establish control measures, different control measures that you implement for each of the categories. Be sure that
How's Dave gone?
you have strict frequent monitoring for vital to be sure that they are not getting exhausted. Very regular, because they are life-saving drugs. Then the moderate supervision is needed for the essential, and then routine checks for the desirable items. Now, it doesn't finish there, because over time, some of these items can change their position. A desirable item can become essential. An essential item can become a vital item over time, based on technology and best practices. So regular review and upgrade due to new guidelines, technological advancement, or changes in hospital service. So you need a regular review, maybe once in 6 months, so that you can reclassify and be current with what you are doing. Any questions? So what are the benefits of the VED in pharmaceutical inventory? If you implement the VED analysis, it will ensure that critical items are always there. You have uninterrupted supply of critical life-saving items. And that will enhance patient care and safety. And then it will optimize inventory holding costs, because you are not investing money in those items that are going to be just there. Come, why are you people misbehaving like this? Who is this person? Who is this woman? Where is she from? So another benefit is optimizes inventory holding costs. That is, it prevents overstocking of less critical items like the desirable ones. And by so doing, it will free up money to procure the vital and sometimes the essential ones. There's also free up storage space for those less critical ones and provide space for the vital and the essential. Then also, another benefit is streamlining procurement decisions, where you clearly categorize the drugs into vital, essential, and desirable. You will now know which ones you are going to preferentially put your money on. For instance, vital items might be sourced from multiple sources to mitigate risk. You don't depend on one person. But if the person fails you, then there's a problem. So the desirable items can be purchased less frequently in large batches. Any questions, class? Concerning the benefits of the VED in pharmaceutical inventory? So let us look at the other aspect. The other one talks about criticality of the item in patient care. The ABC looks at monetary value. It determines the value of inventory items based on their importance to the business. So like if you are running a pharmaceutical shop, you might apply the ABC, the patent medicine shop. So this inventory management system ranks items on demand. Which items moves fast? And what is the cost? and then risk data. Based on that, inventory managers group items into classes based on those criteria: demand, cost, and risk data. So by so doing, it will help business leaders understand which products or services are most critical to the financial success of the organization. So it is based on the three criteria. That is, either using sales volume or profitability to categorize drugs into class A. How much profit do I make from selling this item? Or how often do they come to buy? And at the end of the day, the turnover. So that enables you to classify some items to A. The next most important are class B, and then the least are class C. But if you desire, you might also create more classes, more than 3, based on how you look at things. So this classification helps businesses focus on their resources on the most critical items, ensuring efficient inventory control and management. So the A items are high value items that represent a small portion of the overall value. They require strict inventory control and regular monitoring to prevent stockouts and ensure availability, because they are in high demand, or that the profit on dealing with them is high. The B items are of moderate value and demand, unlike the A items which are in high demand. They require a balanced approach to management, receiving more oversight than the C item. The last of large portion of the inventory, they require minimal management and oversight. And they are inexpensive and frequently used. Any questions, class? So how do we perform the analysis for the ABC? Just as we did analysis for the VET, identifying the drugs, setting up the expert team, classify, determine stock level, and so on and so forth. So a thorough ABC analysis begins with identifying the objectives to be achieved. What do you want to achieve? Is it high turnover, high profit? Depending on what you want. Once you have determined your objective, you need to collect necessary information to categorize the items based on their demand and their profitability. So once the classes are in place, close track and make decisions based on resulting data. So how do we do the analysis step by step? 1, identify the objectives. After you identify the objectives, which can be lower procurement costs or raise cash flow by optimizing inventory level, whatever. The next one is to collect data that we'll use to now back up these objectives. So the most common data to collect is the amount spent on each item. How much does this drug cost? So if it is easy to calculate, you can gather the weighted cost, including gross profit margin, ordering and carrying out cost data. So that is the next thing. Collect data to determine the cost of that item or the profit margin on that item. And then thereafter, you sort by decreasing order of impact. The highest profitable or cost that are down the line, so from the top to the bottom. Then you calculate the sales impact. In other words, for each inventory item, calculate its impact on sales as a percentage by dividing the annual item cost by the aggregate total. In other words, of all the drugs we sold, this was the total amount. This particular item, what percentage of the total amount did it contribute? That is the thing. So for each inventory item, calculate its impact on the sales as a percentage by dividing the annual item cost by the aggregate total of all items. So by so doing, you'll be able to determine the percentage of fraction to compare items on the list. This one was 5%. This one was 10%. This one was 17%. This one was 3%. This one was 1.5%, as the case may be. And then after you've done that, you now sort items into buying class. Once you define the class, work on contract renegotiation, vendor consolidation, and so on and so forth. Making changes in areas that can provide significant saving. And lastly, you analyze the classes. Once categories and strategic cost management are defined, you schedule reviews to monitor the success or failure of decisions. So the best practice in ABC analysis, for you to do it in the best way, there are things you expected to put at your fingertips. One, you keep the classification simple. Very simple. A, B, C. Categorize items based on their frequency, based on how frequent they move through your organization. In other words, the number of times or how often people come to take those items out of your shop. Fast-moving items are more subject to stockouts. So those are the ones that should be in the A group. So you make sure that they don't get out of stock. You can also categorize them based on value or gross profit margin. So the most expensive items will be placed in class A, average price items B, and then least expensive items C. Then you assign service and labor levels at the same time. In other words, periodically you are going to check those ones that are in class A. You have to spend more time to review them and spend the least time to review those in class C. That's the meaning. Then you segment key performance indicators by class. Create distinct key performance indicators, corresponding reports and dashboard for each class. How they are moving, how much they are bringing in, as the case may be. Then you establish performance reviews. Conduct performance review when doing full inventory maintenance or around schedules and rules that depend on ABC classification. Then periodically you need to review surplus stock, because you might have surplus. In as much as you are trying to avoid shortages, but also have surplus. So decide if your current surplus stock level may make sense for your company. The global just-in-time economy, the surplus stock may pose unnecessary risk and high holding, because we don't want to keep drugs for too long. That means you are tying your money down. So if it doesn't make sense to tie your money down, then there's no need. And then sometimes you might be managing different facilities in different locations. So manage across locations. Supply chain managers need the ability to manage inventory across physical locations, different locations. And then sometimes you also count inventory in transit. You're expecting something to come or to transfer from one store to another store. So you need to track time when you are doing movement of your goods from one place to the other. Any questions? All right, so then sometimes you need to reclassify purposefully because it's not cast on stone that A items will continue to be there. Some items might have seasonal influence. So if that season passes, it will stop moving. It's like in Europe and America, during winter, summer clothes are no more moving. That's why they put them up for sales. Everybody goes for winter clothing. So at that, during summer, the classification will be right. During winter, you have to classify and put them as those that are in category B or C. So remain flexible in how and when you reclassify them. You may need to reclassify inventory periodically because of market changes, alteration in your customer base, or their buying habits. Then you consider sales and inventory in tandem. Recognize relationship between sales and inventory. And finally, we'll talk about lower leverage technology and resulting data. You can use automated system to complete replenishment process and reorganize obstacles in demand and avoid fulfilling problems. Can use data to manage times you need to replenish and then for your planning. All right. So what are the benefits of the ABC? By classifying them into ABC, it brings about prioritization. The categorization brings about prioritization based on profitability and turnout. The second benefit is cost efficiency. The system helps reduce unnecessary stock associated with holding costs. Those items that will not move, you are going to buy less of them. So your money will not be tied down. The another benefit is inventory turnover. By maintaining the right balance between stock availability and demand, you can reduce excess inventory and avoid risk of obsolescence. Then it also improves your forecasting because periodically look at these things and change and reclassify. So monitoring and collecting data about products that have high customer demand can increase the accuracy of sale forecasting. As managers, you can use the information to set inventory level and prices to increase overall revenue for your company. And above all, the benefits also involve helping you to make the right decisions because of the classification you have made that is based on data. All right. Another benefit is resource allocation, where you're putting your money most. Class A, followed by Class B, and list of in Class C. Then because the customers want, their demands are put into consideration, we provide better customer service. And then also enables you to better product life cycle management. So it gives you an insight into where a product in its life cycle is critical for forecasting demand and stock taking. Then it also enables you to reduce storage expenses. And finally, it simplifies supply chain management. You know what supply chain is? Supply chain is for a particular product where the raw materials come from, how they are procured, how they are transported, how they are stored, how they are transformed in a production line to finished goods, and how they are transported to distributors and then finally consumers. That's the supply chain. So it will able to determine if it's time to consolidate suppliers or shift to a single source to reduce carrying costs and simplify operations. Just like the benefits, there are limitations of using the ABC analysis. parameter instability. It often results in managers assigning up to 50% of items to a new category if every quarter or year, because you have to reclassify. So often companies are not aware of the change until there is a problem with demand. So if you say it will still be like this, let us buy 50% in Vital A, in Class A, 30% in B, and 20% in C. When the demand changes, you might not know until you find out that some other things are in high demand, but the ones you thought in high demand, not. Limited pattern consideration. The method will not account for factors like new products introduction. When you bring in a new product or seasonal variations that are put into consideration the demands for a product. For example, a new product may have low sales because it does not have any history. So you might wrongly put it in category C. But once it is known, it might move from C to A. Then low information extraction. The classification may not provide all the statistical data and details needed to make informed decisions. All right. High resource consumption. If you invest so much in one group, then there are problems. Value blindness is another aspect. The analysis ascribes product importance based on revenue or frequency of use. Or it might forget that some items may not hold this. For example, a retail may display items that they are rarely sell, but may attract a lot of customers. If you don't display, they don't see it, they might not know. But once it's displayed, a lot of customers will want to buy that product. So who buy other products, they will come and say, oh, this one, you take it along. System conflicts with traditional costing systems and is out of compliance with generally acceptable accounting principles. Then sometimes you can end up with undersupply or oversupply based on misjudgment. High resource consumption is repeated. That's number 4. Loss risk. Just because those items in B and C do not have the high value as in Class A product does not mean that they don't have value. They do. One of the limitations of the analysis is that excess stocks are always in jeopardy of obsolescence or damage. So once you keep them too long, they will lose their value. So you might end up declaring sales. The mandatory standardization. The method is only successful if every item is subject to standardization of materials that include how they are named, stored, and consistently rated. Sometimes you could have arbitrary standardization for each category can classify goods depending on the manager's professional judgment, which might be subjective. Then business limitations also can be limitations negatively affect the outcome. So how do we implement the system? Implementation requires identifying inventory items. In other words, list all items, the inventory, along with their annual consumption values. After the listing, thereafter, you now categorize. And then you finally monitor and adjust. That's the implementation. List out all the items. Determine their consumption or their cost per item. And thereafter, based on their consumption or cost. You now categorize them into ABC. And then thereafter, you monitor and adjust. Regular review to reclassify where necessary. So let us compare the two, the VED and the ABC inventory management methods. See their contrast. So we have this table in 3 columns. Features, VED analysis, and ABC analysis. So what is the primary focus? For VED analysis, the primary focus is operational and clinical criticality. How important is it in life saving? For ABC, annual consumption value. So while one is about life saving importance, the other one is about how much money it generates. Category basis, importance to patient's care and function. The other one is monetary expenditure. Primary goal, minimize risk of stock out for critical items. Otherwise, critical items should never be out of stock. Here, optimize inventory items, inventory investment, and control high-value items. Olushola, mute your mic. Olushola, mute your mic. You are conversing, meaning that you're not listening to the lecture again. Why don't you log out and go? If the lecture is not interesting, log out and go. You are not compelled to be here. We are not even taking attendance. So what are the key questions we ask? How important is this item for patient care? How much money is tied up in this item? Limitation, ignore cost and financial impact if used alone. Ignore criticality, potentially leading to shortage of cheap life-saving items. Any questions? There's no question. We'll go to another aspect of today's lecture, drug management. So, what are drugs? They are very essential materials in health management. If you go to hospital, you are sick, they will ask, have you gone to hospital? Have you taken drugs? Are the drugs working? So from the household point of view, the availability of drugs is one of the key components of healthcare of good quality. So what are the objectives of drug management? There are broad objectives, there are core objectives, and there are supporting objectives. Let's look at the broad objectives. The first broad objective in drug management is to ensure that the required drugs, which are of the highest quality, are available at all times at the best possible price in the facility. In other words, any drug they require that is always there and that the price is the best they can get. Outside there, might get it higher. The second objective is to ensure that drugs do not expire in your hands, or you tell patients that the drugs are out of stock when they come. So optimize inventory management of drugs, that you don't record out of stock and drugs do not remain in your shelf, on your shelf and expire. And then the third objective is to maintain quality and potency through proper storage. To be sure that they don't expire in your hands. A drug might not expire, but because of the way you store it, like vaccines that have vial monitors, once they change color to a certain extent, you can't use them. So manufacturers will tell you the storage condition of certain drugs. A lot of drugs should not be stored in a moist place. And those ones that cannot withstand moisture, they even come with desiccant inside their containers that will absorb moisture. Then another objective is to comply with regulations. Drugs are regulated items. So what does NAFDAC say? Those critical items that should be in under lock and key, where are you keeping them? Another objective is to support patient care through reliable, cost-effective supply. Where we are getting drugs that are not too costly, and you have gone through, and the drugs are very effective. And then, based on the first ethical principle in medicine, do no harm, we want to ensure that the drugs are safe for the patient's consumption. And then, last of the broad objectives is to support rational use of medicines for patients. And what do you mean by rational use? You don't just prescribe for the sake of prescribing. You prescribe because they are indicated. You prescribe because they are the best under the circumstance that will work for the patient. You don't prescribe because the patient wants it. In rational prescribing, you make a diagnosis. You make a diagnosis before you prescribe the drugs. And you prescribe drugs using generic names. And as much as possible, you avoid using parenteral drugs. Parenteral drugs are reserved for patients, not because they demand, patient demand. No, because there is no oral formulation for that drug, or that the patient is either unconscious or cannot retain orally, vomiting. That is the thing. So these are the broad objectives. Let us look at the core objectives. It's a breakdown of these same core objectives, broad objectives, into smaller bits. So procurement and supply, to purchase necessary drugs from reliable sources and supply them to consumer or consuming departments or patients efficiently and on time. And inventory control, maintain adequate stock level to prevent stockouts and overstocking. And cost management, operate economically to reduce waste and minimize expenditure and save revenue. Quality assurance, to ensure that the drugs preserve their potency. Protect them, that is sensitive drugs, from direct sunlight and so on and so forth. Those ones that are temperature sensitive, put them in refrigerated containers like that. Then you keep appropriate records. Then regulatory compliance. The supportive ones, if you arrange your drugs well, you can effectively utilize the available space. Design layout to optimize space, keep fast-moving items so that they can easily be accessible, and store those bulky ones appropriately away. Information management, you use data for reporting, analysis, and decision-making to know which drugs will belong to the VED, the vital, essential, and desirable, or the A, B, and C. Protect assets, prevent loss, theft, or damage, or wastage of stored items. Because you might have drugs, you think that they are on the shelf. The bin card will show that you have 20 items, but if you go physically on the shelf, you might see only 18 items. 2 you cannot get. Why? Because either you have not recorded that you took 2, or that 2 they are stolen, like some of your stuff. Then lastly, support research. Some items are used for research, so to manage and store drugs used for research purposes. Any questions, class, with regards to the objectives of drug management? So let us look at the drug management process. It's essentially a cycle consisting of 6 steps. When we are looking at the VED and the ABC, we never stop short of talking about the required drugs or the selection of the drugs. So the first step in drug management process is the selection of the drugs that you want to use in your facility. Which drugs do we need in our facility? Thereafter, we quantify them based on different criteria. We use the VED, the ABC to quantify, or the consumption pattern, which is a combination of the two. Thereafter, we look at how we are going to get money to buy these drugs. And then the buying process, procurement. Then after procurement, how do we store and distribute the drugs? Then finally, how do we utilize these drugs in the facility? So let's start with the first one, selection of the required drugs. So it's essentially a cycle. These are the 6 steps. So let's go to the first step, selection of the required drugs. Now, the level of care determines the type of drugs that are to be used there. Some drugs are used at every level. Antibiotics, antihypertensives, pain relieving drugs, but there are some medical preparations that are used only at tertiary level, some only secondary level, a few at primary level. So the level of care determines the type of drugs that you want to select. So the level of care influences the disease profile, because the problems they take to primary health care centers are not the ones they take to secondary facilities. The ones they take to are not the ones, even if they come, they will be referred to the next higher level. So the level of care influences the disease profile. So the concept of essential drugs is important based on the level of care and the disease profile. And what are essential drugs? WHO has defined essential drugs as the drugs that meet majority of the population needs and the prevailing health conditions. Essential drugs, as per WHO definition, are simply those drugs that satisfy the healthcare needs of majority of the population, as well as the prevailing health conditions in a particular location. So these drugs are selected with due regard to public health relevance, how effective they are, how safe they are, and then relatively how cheap they are in comparison to other drugs that are equally effective. So comparative cost effectiveness. So if 2 anti-malarials are equally effective, we are looking for the cheaper of the 2, that is also safe. So at the primary level of care, what are the common health conditions? We see mainly diarrhea, malaria, respiratory tract infections, minor accidents from falls and whatever, and so on and so forth. So the drugs at that level will also be for these problems. So the essential drug concept requires an essential drug list. So in choosing the list, the overriding principle is that you have to get the most effective drug that costs the least. In other words, which ones are effective for malaria treatment or for antibiotics, for cough? So of all these, which one is the cheapest? which ones are safe. If they're all safe, we'll pick the cheapest because all of them are effective. That's the cost-efficient one. So why do we want essential drugs? They are intended to be available within the context of a functioning health system at all times and in adequate quantities and in dosage form that are appropriate, and that the quality should be assured, and they should have adequate information with regard to literature on their pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic effects, dosage formula, and the price the individuals and community can afford. It's an aspect of primary care definition that is brought into essential drugs. Any questions, class, with regard to step 1, selection of required drugs? Hello, the class is dwindling. Oh, they were 130 something, now they are 125. All right. The second step is quantification. We have selected the drugs, so we want to know the quantity to buy. We cannot just buy arbitrarily because they will stay and expire in our hands, or that they will finish before we are ready to go and buy. So we must use data to quantify the required drugs. And in doing so, we have two options. Option 1, we look at the consumption pattern of this drug in the health facility. We buy drugs, we dispense, we keep records and send statistical returns. So from the records available, you determine the consumption rate for the previous year for a particular item, specifically the different quarters and months of the previous year. That will enable you to have an idea of the likely required quantity for the current year, the current quarter or month. Another option is the use of morbidity method and standard treatment schedule. What do we mean by morbidity and standard treatment schedule? For a disease like malaria, what is the standard treatment schedule? The ACTs, you take them morning and evening for 3 days. For an adult, for a child, the dose is also calculated based on the age or weight. So with that, you know what quantity of ACT you need to treat one patient. And then for the number of patients you anticipate that are going to have that problem, plus other supportive treatment like antipyretics, anti-analgesics, and so on and so forth. So you can do your calculations based on this equation, Q equals N times D. What is Q? Is the quantity of the item required. N is the number of cases or episodes of the disease in question, say now malaria. Then D, what is the standard dose per case? 6 tablets of so milligram, as the case may be. So you can now calculate for 1,000 cases or episodes for the quarter, for the month, for the week, as the case may be. Plus, any questions? Hello?
No questions, sir.
We are hearing you, sir.
We are hearing you, sir.
The people in this class, are they MPH students or they are health system students? Which people are in this class?
MPH.
MPH, sir.
Only MPH.
PH.
No other specialization apart from MPH.
NPS, sir.
Ikenna, how many MPH students are there in your set? How many MPH students do you have in your set?
So far, we have 450.
Hello? Iken, I'm listening to you. Iken, are you still there or you have logged out? You are the class rep. I'm asking you how many students are in your set, MPH.
Looks like Kikena has dropped off.
Maybe his network, because he was talking before, his network.
Or do you know how many are in your class? You are the one that answering now. Do you know how many MPH students you have in your class? I know, I don't
Good evening,
know.
Prof.
Yes, go ahead.
We are up to 400.
475.
475.
475. Ha. And we have less than 130 in the class now. Oh, no good though. That's not good though. So the third step is how do we get money to buy the drugs? Because we have selected the drugs, we have quantified them. The next one is money to pay for. So where are the sources of funds to procure drugs for a facility? You can get money from the drug revolving funds if one already exists. If it doesn't exist, you can create one which will have two elements, one of two elements. They can give you seed fund, that is amount of money to start the drug revolving scheme. Or they can give you drugs, which they call seed stock. The drug revolving scheme is the main element of the Bamako Initiative of 1987, put to make essential drugs available in health facilities. So it gives either seed fund or seed stock, provided by government or donor agencies. So if they give you seed stock, you put value on them, sell, and then go back to buy. If they give you seed fund, you select the drugs, go source, buy, sell, and go and buy and sell again. You can also get grants from your organization. If you are running an industrial clinic, the organization can give you a grant to provide drugs and medical consumables. If you are running a facility where they are having health insurance, you can have advances and capitations. You can get donations or contributions from stakeholders to use. So any of these could be sources of fund. So now you have the money, you have identified the drugs you need, you have quantified them, you have the money to buy. So how do you procure the drugs? The procurement of the drugs can follow one of several patterns. You can walk across the hospital to a pharmacy shop to buy, which is direct purchase. Or you can advertise in a newspaper, which is open tendering. Or you can do selective tendering. Call a few people who are reputable and give them the tender documents, ask them to quote for those items. Or you can do the last, which is negotiated procurement. Direct negotiation. How much do you want to sell this to me? No, can you reduce it to this? And at the end, you go through the entire list, then you calculate, then the supply and. So let's look at them one by one. Class, I want to take a short break. Somebody just called my line. Let them not call again and cut my.
No problem, sir.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
All right, sir.
Okay,
sir.
we are with you.
We can hear you, sir.
So the direct purchase is
Hear you.
going across the road to a pharmaceutical store to buy the drug. Definitely that is not economical. So we usually reserve that for drugs that are out of stock but are very important, vital to be used, that we cannot wait. So the method is usually employed where there are out of stock items that are urgently required in the health facility. Then you can go across, maybe as a patient who is having, just like those in the vital group, like magnesium sulfate for an eclamptic patient or pre-eclamptic patient, you can run across and buy, or diazepam, as the case may be. Then open tendering, which is a formal procedure by which quotations for supply of drugs under generic names are invited from manufacturers, suppliers, and manufacturer representatives. And you require some form of information on the tender and what you exactly want. So what are the information? One, complete product specification, including quantity of the item that you need, then realistic delivery date, then contract terms with regard to how we are going to pay after they have delivered the drugs, and then closing date for the submission of offers. Then you can possibly ask cost-saving measures to be suggested so that you can buy less at a lower rate. You know, most of you have done a wedding and you printed cards and you told the printer that he should give you quotation. The printer will tell you that if it's 200 cards, one card will be so naira. If it is above 200, one card will be a bit less. If it's above 400 cards, one card will be much less. I don't know if you understand me. Hello?
Yes,
Yes,
sir, we
sir.
understand.
You understand?
Yes, sir.
So
We understand.
if it is 200 cards and below, they can say one card is 200 naira. If it is 300 naira and 300, 210, 1 to 300, they can say it's 90 naira. If it is 400 to 500, can say it's 80 naira per card. So that is what that last item is. Request for suppliers to suggest suitable cost-saving alternatives. For example, increase quantity to attract reduced unit cost. So that is open tendering. Then open tendering will require a lot of staff work. You are going to pay newspaper, you are going to, so many people will apply, and then you are going to look through all of them. But you can do what we call selective tendering. Here, a limited number of suppliers are contacted to tender the quantities required. And the terms in this selective tendering are the same as open tendering. But the problem is that you are going to receive less number of applications. So you require less staff time to process the tender documents. Then the third one is negotiated procurement. You look for a few and bargain directly with them. So here, you approach small selected number of suppliers and bargain directly with them. This is usually quicker and it takes a shorter time to deliver. So these are the 4 ways you can procure drugs. Now, when the drugs are, after you have awarded the contract and they are bringing the drugs, you need to monitor the process, because you need to check the quantity and the quality of the drug, whether it's what you want. Look at the dosage formulations, their shelf life or expiry date, and storage conditions to know whether there are things you can store based the available space and conditions. So storage is very important in drug management because if you don't store them well, they can go bad. Vaccines, insulin, they need to be stored in under ideal conditions. Other drugs to be stored in the shelf in open place, away from direct sunlight, away from moisture. So they are very important. Without that, your drugs can go bad. Then you monitor the drug stock. When the drugs come in, you usually receive vouchers on receipt of the drugs from suppliers. Then you record the drugs in quantities to the drug stock ledger with dates of receipt. Then if drugs are to be taken out of the store to clinics, to other locations, then there will be requisition vouchers. They are completed, approved before the drugs are issued out. And when they are issued out, the ledgers are updated. You update stock ledgers immediately after issuing out of drugs. And if you have a computerized system, then you make the necessary computer record alterations to reflect the current situation that you have issued out this quantity and that quantity. Any questions, class?
Yes, sir. Please, I have a question.
So that's for stocks. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to find out, do you do it every time you want to buy a drug, or you just have one person that you have gone into the tendering with, and then you concentrate on that person and buy?
It depends, because in government, you are not tied. If the prices of drugs change and you are tied to one person and the person said this price has changed, how would you know?
Thank you, sir.
How would you know? So each time you have to advertise for tender, except you want to go using the negotiated procurement.
Yes, please, I'm with you.
But if you want a transparent system, the open tendering or the selective tendering are the best, because you get quotations from different people and you compare. But if you are tied to one person, you don't know whether the person's drugs are costlier or cheaper. You might always think that the person is doing you a favor. And we had a problem when I was running the Navy Hospital in Lagos. In fact, my master's project was on quality of care in Navy Hospital, Lagos. And one of the concerns of the respondents was cost of care, that our drugs are costly. So when I was running the hospital, I called the pharmacist. I said, on the average, how many patients are given prescription in this hospital a day? He said, maybe 200 people. How many people end up in their pharmacy? He said, less than 100. So where do the rest go? He said, he doesn't know. I said, you should know. If you see 200 patients, give them prescription, and less than 100 come to your pharmacy, it means that the rest go somewhere else. So why is it so? I said, okay, no problem. Now, bring your drug list. Give me your price list. Show me. I said, okay, take this list. Go to Ajegunle. Find out the cost of these drugs across the counter. Go to Navy Town in the Mami market. Check their prices. Go to Road 1 chemist. Go to Agboju. And we found out that our drugs in our hospital were costlier than what others were retailing neighboring areas. Why? Because we were buying from places where we cannot negotiate. We are not buying under competitive bidding. They determine how much we will buy, and that is what they give to us. We cannot say this is what we'll buy until I put my foot down. Some of them said they cannot reduce the price. Okay, then you have to stop. So we brought a new set of people. And who are those? They are our wives, our brothers, and our big people's sisters. They were the ones that were bringing drugs to us, determining how much we will pay. Do you see why we were working and other people were making the money? Hello, Madam Pe. What is it? What's your name? Pe
Pamela.
something.
Please, it's well understood. Thank
Pamela,
you.
okay. All right, so that is it. Now, what are the advantages of drug stock monitoring? You want to know when your drug stock drops, when you need replenishment. The drug stock monitoring also determines drug use and patient treatment. How fast are these drugs going? Is there an undue high rate of consumption of a particular drug? What could be responsible? It enables the recognition of discrepancies in drug usage. Sometimes, if you monitor the drug stock, you find out that you should have more drugs on the shelf than what you physically have. There are discrepancies between what the ledger has and what the physical stock is. And then you also help you assist in detecting changes in drug use pattern. Any questions? All right. So how do we manage our stock? There are two ways of managing stock, A and B, and then first in and first out. What do we mean by A and B? When we bring in the drugs, after classifying them into using the VED classification or ABC, depending on what we are, we can say, okay, let us divide these drugs into two, A part and B part. We start to use one part. And when that part is finished or is 3/4 finished or half 50% depleted, depending on how long it takes for us to go through the procurement process, we can finish one part before we start, or go halfway of one part before we start, or 3/4 way. So that by the time we move into the second one, the procurement process has gone far. And before it goes to completion, drugs have arrived. So you use one stock, and then you keep the other one in reserve. And then at a point, you start the replenishment process. Then before the second one will be finished, new one would have come. That is the A and B. The other one is first in, first out, that you might have old stock and then new stock will come. Because it is generally believed that the older drugs will expire before the newer drugs. Because no sane person will go to the market and the ones you have in the store will expire in 2 months' time, in 3 months, 6 months' time. Then you go to the market, you now buy drugs that will expire in 4 months' time. No. So the first that goes in should go out in longer shelf life. The only alternative is if we are redistributing drugs from other shops or stores or facilities under a central medical store system. That some items are not moving in some locations. Then we bring them in and expire first out. But if you are procuring, we should not procure a drug that will expire before the one we have in our store. Class, do you understand me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So how do we distribute the drugs in the facility? Distribution of drugs in the facility is based on two systems, the push and pull system. Push system involves sending the drugs from the store to the dispensing units or facilities, even when they have not asked for. But why will you send drugs to people who have not asked for? You will send because everybody sends returns to the central store or to the ministry. So from their records, you know that their drugs are getting exhausted, and that if you don't replenish their stock, they will get out of stock. So you push the drugs to them. So how do you know? It displays data on monthly, quarterly, or annual stock returns that provides information on their consumption pattern, and then the monitoring reports. The other part is to pull system. Wait for them. Let them ask for the drugs from you. They pull them out of you because they need them. So the pull system will be effective if at the point of collection they are paying for the drugs. But if they are not paying for the drugs, then it can result into wastage. If you wait for the pull system, they might have situations where drugs are out of stock and they are not coming. We one excuse or the other. That is the thing. Say we don't have drug vehicle to go and buy and this and that. Any questions, class? All right, so let us look at the use of drugs in the health facilities. I have talked about rational prescribing. The rational prescribing demands that you make a proper diagnosis before you decide on which drugs to prescribe. And then drugs should be prescribed in generic form. And we use parenteral drugs only when they are absolutely indicated. In other words, either there is no oral formulation of that drug, or the patient is unconscious, or the patient cannot retain oral is vomiting. Then you avoid polypharmacy. What do you mean by polypharmacy? Prescribing more than one drug for the same problem when only one can do it. You prescribe paracetamol, you prescribe diclofenac, two analgesics. You prescribe 2 antibiotics based on sensitivity for the one organism. This one 3 pluses, this one 3 pluses. Then you are prescribed. So why not prescribe only one? So that is rational prescribing. Any question to step 6? All right, so the last one is, what are the sources of wastage in the drug management cycle where the management cycle is not actualized? So the first one is when you select drugs that you do not need. And that's why we said the disease profile determines the level of care. So for every level of care, primary, secondary, tertiary, they have essential drug list. So a drug that is not essential, but essential drug, we'll talk about drug that meets the needs of majority of the population and the common health conditions. So if you choose a drug that is not for a common health condition, it might stay and expire. Choose a drug that is not for condition that you see regularly in that your facility, it might stay and expire. And then if you select the right drugs and you improperly quantify them and expire. And if the procurement process is inefficient, maybe you're just buying from one source without competitive bidding, you might be buying at a higher rate than what you should be buying if you have opened up the market. And then improper storage and distribution. If you don't store the drugs well, they can go bad on the shelf. If you open them direct to direct sunlight, you can go bad. If you don't store the vaccines or those ones that require temperature regulation, if you throw them in a moist place, they will go bad. So you're going to lose money there. Irrational prescribing. When you have polypharmacy or patients come say, I need injection, give my daughter injection, give my son injection, give my father injection, when they don't need. Injections have their own complications and they are costlier. So we are going to waste money. And then poor drug education. Every person you are giving drug must be counseled on the need to finish the medication, because drugs are provided in courses. They are provided in courses, a course of 5 days, a course of 3 days, a course of 14 days, a course of 21 days, as the case may be, or on a daily basis for as long as necessary. So when you don't give proper drug education counseling, if they take the drugs and feel better, they can stop. The rest will be wasted. And then if the antibiotics, resistance can appear because of incomplete treatment. They might have some undesirable effects, but because you did not counsel them, once they feel funny, they stop the medication. But it's your responsibility to tell them, look, you might feel dizzy when you are taking this drug, so don't drive. Don't worry, you get used to it. After a few days, the dizziness will stop, or weakness, as the case may be. So if you don't give them proper drug counseling or the education, their compliance rate will be poor and they will waste the drugs. Some of them will even share with other people who have similar health problems. Any questions, class? If there's no question, we have come to the end of this lecture today. Now,
Thank you, Prof.
class rate, choose Monday or Tuesday for the next lecture, because tomorrow I'm not going to be around. I'm going for my daughter's PhD graduation. So
Wow.
Yeah.
choose
Congratulations, sir.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank
Congrats,
you.
sir.
Choose a day for the second lecture.
Congratulations, sir.
Well, we can do Monday, sir.
Choose a date and be sure that the login detail will work there. If it's Monday, no problem. Choose a date and let me know by latest Sunday. By latest Sunday, let me know the date. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any question?
Thank you, sir.
No, sir.
All right.
No, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Maria.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so
All
much, sir.
right. Good night.
Good night,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
All right.
Sir. I got you. Good night, sir. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, sir. Good night.
All
Congratulations,
right.
sir. Thank you, sir.